don't have any idea what that could be, then it may be not so clear. How clear is that? Is it where your target was or not where your target was? What percentage is away from, so on and so on. Because as I said, it's about saying, I know I'm roughly near home, but roughly near home, if your partner rang you and said, how long before you get home? It's just roughly, isn't it? But it's not very clear. As the sat-nav says, 46 minutes I should be home. You get into an accident, there's an accident or a delay, I'm going to be delayed, it looks like it's now going to be an hour. You can ring and actually say that. But if it's just in your head, it's all a bit fuzzy and a bit woolly. I don't have any idea how long I'm going to be to get home. And then you get that comment when you get home. You said you were going to be home. In about half an hour, it's 2 hours later, you've got home. Dinner's gone cold. So interesting, eh? So it's worth doing the exercise. As I said, we're focusing on that first box, but it links to everything else. Okay? So the clarity of the first box, because you remember what Brad said, Brad talked about, it's not the planning and the length of the document of the plan, it's the process of doing the plan that is useful, because it should bring out the thoughts of what needs to happen and hopefully give you more clarity about what you now need to do. So it's not, I'm going to write this long thing and then never look at it again. That's not worth doing in itself. It's the process of doing it and the discussions you have and that as a team that helps you get that clarity about what we need to do and what we need to focus on. So is it alright if I move on to the finance side?
Yep.
Because time is very tight, so I'm going to move on at pace. Does anybody use cash flow forecasting at the moment? Anybody do cash flow forecasting? All this orangey bit on here is your costs. That's normally the normally the easy bit to do first. Is put your costs in, all your costs for the month and for the year. So as a business or as a person, because a lot of people won't have this for your personal life, but again, in your personal life, you could do this spreadsheet as well. What are your costs for the whole year in terms of your lifestyle, your mortgage, your rent, your shopping, your bills, etc. Most of them are fairly fixed, and some of them are variable. So how much petrol you use and how much shopping you buy is variable, but it doesn't vary that much. You probably know roughly what it is most months, typically. So you can estimate over the month. Do I spend £60 a week, £50 a week, £20 a week on shopping? You know roughly. And if you do that on an average per month, you can then average it and say it's £100, £200, £300, whatever it is. So you know roughly what it is, even though you could cut it if you wanted to, but roughly. And then you project that over the whole year. As I said, most costs are actually fixed. Even variable costs are fairly fixed in the sense that, as I said, they're fairly predictable. Now, you don't need to get bogged down with what's fixed cost, what's variable cost, all the rest of it, but fixed costs are basically things like the rent for this building, or a car loan, or things like that. It doesn't matter whether you use the building every minute of the day, you never come in here, you've still got to pay the same for it. And the car's the same. Car sitting on the driveway, whether you use it or not, the loan to pay it off is the same. Insurance, whether you use it or not, you still have to pay it every month. So those are fixed costs, you can't change them. Well, you could, but you'd have to sell the car or stop using the office. And some commitments you can't get out of them. So if you even want to stop, there's a contract, isn't it? So even if you have a car loan, you can say, well, I don't use the car anymore, but they'll still say you got paid unless you sell it. So these costs are fixed. Now the variable cost is the petrol you put in it. So everything that could vary throughout the year, that's variable costs. But as I said, most of these things are fairly predictable. So even though they're variable, there's still a pattern most people have. So most people buy the similar shopping every week. Most people put the same amount of petrol in their car most weeks. So it's not that variable. So even telephone costs are variable. But again, most people, you can know what they are. So this is the easiest bit, is to fill in the costs. The bit that causes problem in most businesses, obviously it's the income, we'll come to that in a minute. The bit that causes a problem in some businesses, or many businesses, is they don't factor in the costs that are not monthly. And that causes a real yo-yo with your cash flow. That's why most businesses and most people, phone contracts, etc., they prefer monthly. If you do weekly and things like that, it sends everything a bit funny. Because weekly, most people don't get paid weekly. So if you did a contract that was weekly, there's sometimes you might not have enough money in your bank. So people don't like doing weekly. People prefer monthly payments. It's 12 a year, that's it. It doesn't get confusing, yeah? Now, think about it. Sometimes rent on commercial units could be quarterly. So there's a big sum that comes out once a quarter, not every month. Again, if that's not factored in, suddenly you get a big bill, people are not predicting this big bill, even though it's kind of, you could say it's obvious, don't factor it in. VAT comes up 3 months, every 3 months you've got to pay a VAT bill. Again, people don't factor that into their cash flow. You just, well, I know I've got to pay VAT, yeah, but have you factored it in your cash flow? Because there's a big hit every 3 months. Similarly, insurance and these kind of things, sometimes you get hit by them as well. Suddenly you get something that comes up and says, insurance is due, you pay annually, you didn't realise it was due in April, it's £1,000. Have you factored that in? Because there suddenly is £1,000 you've got to find. That's why a lot of business people lease and do as much things as possible monthly, because it's more controllable, isn't it? If you lease product, equipment and things like that, you pay every month. If you buy it, you could do a loan, yes, but it could be one-off lump sums, it could be really painful. So sometimes you get that, or you get something else, a subscription. That's once a year for software, IT, anything comes up, bang, again, it's not every month, and you didn't predict it again, and it can be a cash flow problem. So just be aware of that. So that's why it's important to do it for the whole year, because some of these lines will not be every month. Office supplies, repairs and maintenance, you might want to factor that in. This is a classic one if you own your own home, repairs and maintenance, yeah? So the whole year you put your mortgage in, and then during the year, washing machine broke down, the roof had a leak, the boiler went, the boiler maybe 1,500 quid to replace. So you've not cash flowed that at all, so of course, typical family, you've got to find 1,500 quid, you've got to put it on a credit card unless you've got savings. In a business, it's similar again, you haven't factored that in, you need to do it, you've got a lease that says you have to do the repair, laptop goes, got to buy a new laptop, 500 quid. So you can't predict it really, it's difficult to predict, but you could put in a fee every month just to say roughly, I spend 50 quid a month on maintenance. Okay? So what's good is you see down the bottom, if you fill this in, it will just add it up for you down the bottom so you know how much is my monthly commitments. Now, the interesting bit is, you get an extra line. You can actually put in the figures, so if you put on how much cash you had at the beginning, so what money have you actually got in the bank? Put that cash actually in there, the figure, as a starting figure. So month one, you put in a figure for, which this is a startup loan document, so it looks like it's the startup costs. But if you put the money in that's in the bank in here, right? Opening cash balance. If you put that figure in there, you've got £300 in the bank right now, £1,000, £10,000, whatever it is in the bank right now. When it does the calculations, it will factor in the fact that there's cash. So it's a literal cash coming in and out of the business. So there's two columns you need to think about, is whether it's red, it goes red as soon as it goes on. If it goes minus, it goes red, which is another very simple thing in terms of just looking at it. Any month that goes red is a cash flow issue. But like with your home, there's two different lines. There's cash in the bank red, and there's monthly red. Now, what I mean by that is, you might have a salary, say you had a salary of every month you get £2,000 salary. Okay? Now, so you put that in, it's £2,000 a month. Now, 1 month your washing machine breaks down, and it can't be repaired. And it's £500 for a new washing machine. Now, that month, you spend £2,500. So it will go red, because can you see your income is 2,000, you're going to spend 2.5, so it goes red. But I've got £1,000 in my bank. So the other line won't go red, because it will show that you've got the cash to buy the washing machine. Yeah? And we live our lives like this, of course we live our lives like this. You've got to buy that washing machine. If your bank account says, I've got enough money, not only to pay my bills for the month, but I have a bit extra, because at the beginning I had £1,000 extra, I can buy that washing machine with my debit card, and I can still pay my bills for the month. But this month I'll go red, because my income is less than my costs. And in business it's the same. So if you have money in the bank, your income may be lower that month than your commitments, but you've got the money to pay for it. And that's what matters. And you could have factors in things like your VAT. So you can put even your VAT on here. So you know when the VAT bill comes, will it go red? Now it might go red for the month, but it doesn't go red in your bank account. And that's what matters. And that's why it's called a cash flow forecast, not a business forecast. Is the cash there? And a lot of businesses struggle because you don't know if the cash is there or not. So that's the problem. And therefore, if you can predict it, so if you know in July, August, September, that's a light month for your business for whatever reason. Say I don't know what business you can think of, but think of a business where things dip because people are on holidays, people are away, so things not so much. Even shops, retail shops. Some retail shops dip in sales because people are away. Yeah, in August, lots of people go on holiday in the UK, so there's lots of people absent, right? So your income drops during that time, but the cost stays the same. Have you factored that in as well? So it's all that things. So not everybody has income that's monthly. Yeah, in a business, some of your clients may pay one-off. Some clients may pay monthly, some clients pay, in different ways. So therefore your cash flow is a little bit, it's not so predictable in that way. So if you don't put in the literal months, you don't know whether you're going to have the money or not. And what you should get to the stage is where you now say, right, I can see on here, July, August, September, we're going to be light. So you start doing the marketing now, knowing that July, August and September, you're not going to have enough money for your bills, so I need to do more. Or your target. You might cover all your bills, but there's no profit then. So you have to, in business, be making more than what's on here to be making a profit. So you might say, yes, I can meet my costs in July, August and September, but there's no profit being made. Yeah, if you do perfumes, Easter eggs, some things, umbrellas, there's some things that are very, very seasonal. Yeah, you'd expect to make most of your money on jumpers in the winter. And in the summer, you're not going to sell so many jumpers, yeah, or overcoats or whatever. So that's predictable. Ice cream. How much ice cream are you going to sell in winter compared to a summer? So you factor that in. So some businesses are very much like that. You know, in November, December, you're going to make all your money on perfume. And maybe Valentine's Day. That's the two times. Valentine's and Christmas. And you know you make all your money that time of year. But then that's very, very seasonal businesses. You're not going to make much money throughout the year. You're going to make all your money at Christmas. So if you have a bad Christmas, then obviously the business is in trouble. Any questions on this? Just on this is on the most on the deficit side at the moment, which is the cost side. It's normally the easiest one is the cost side, because these are the ones that are more predictable. So it's easier to fill in. Most people can fill in this bit because it's you've got the bills to pay. The other bit is where it gets tricky, because now you have to think in a crystal ball. Anything on that one? Is that clear enough? Really, really good if you use this, and you can use this, as I said, you could use it in your personal life as well, because all you do is change these to whatever your bills are at home. And you will have the same calculation throughout the year, and the one-off. Look, somebody's birthday, 21st birthday, how much are you going to spend on it? Somebody's wedding, different things that happen in your life, you know it's going to happen. You want to go on holiday, how much is it going to cost? So if you haven't factored it in, where's the money going to come from that holiday? So you know you have to, so you might have a savings budget here, you might say savings. So you're going to do some savings, that's where your costs are going to go to a savings fund or pension or something. Alright, so you can do it for your personal side as well. Now, this is where it gets into the crystal ball bit now. Because you can say, I know what my costs are going to be in December. I know that now, because I know what my rent, your mortgage, you know what these things are going to be. But do I know what my income is going to be in December? It's hard to know, isn't it? It's too far away, unless you have some contracts. If you have contracts where people are liable to pay you something, and you know it goes into December, then you can put that down. But if you haven't got that type of business, you can't know what you're going to earn in December. Not now, anyway. So you have to guess. Okay? So, part of it is so month one, say month one was April, okay? You have to put down what you think you're going to earn in April, based on the contracts you might have signed, the current clients you have, etc. The closest month to you probably could predict roughly what you're going to earn in April. Okay? Now, what you should do is at the end of April, somebody should update that column to what the reality was now. So slowly what you're going to have is you're going to have columns of actual and columns that are predicted. Does that make sense? So at the beginning of the year it's all predicted. You're making a guesstimation of what you think you're going to earn. And it should be logically based on what your income, what your costs are. You need to find that money. Or, obviously there's going to need a capital injection into the business. So if you can't meet your overheads, you need to borrow money, credit card or something needs to come into the business. All right? The same way in your personal life. You know, my child's wedding is in July. It's going to cost me £3,000. Some of that cost is right on that time. Where's it going to come from? If I haven't got the income, I'm going to have to borrow it, get a loan or something. So as I said, every month that goes, so if this was March, at the end of next week, you'd be able to put in actually what did we actually earn in the business in March. So you can put that figure in there. Now, it's your choice how you want to do it. Now, I would suggest to you put the cash you earned, not what should have been earned. See, the danger is you before the month you put in what should have come in. But if people didn't pay you, you can't put that in as an actual figure because you didn't actually get that money. They didn't pay. Even if they're a week behind, 2 weeks behind, doesn't matter. You predicted it, they were supposed to pay, but they didn't. So the cash isn't there. So you're fooling yourself if you put that in there. It looks like you're meeting your bills, but actually if you look in your bank, it's not actually there, so you're not actually meeting your bills. You need to be real about that and just put in the real figure there. Yeah? So, as I said, as the year goes by, so if you had done that in January and February should be already filled in with actual numbers, and you're already starting to see that the income is good or not.
The way we did it at the bank was we had, for every month, you had your forecast numbers and then the actual numbers at the end of the month. So that helped you then for the following year or the following quarter to adjust.
What happened last year?
Exactly. Well, how far was I off with this, or how much did I actually spend? And then, I think the better your forecast is, the better you are in financial position.
Absolutely. And the longer you do it, the better, easier it becomes.
Yeah.
Because you have more historical data to base it on. So if you have last year's data, if you could backfill it, it'd be really useful to backfill.
Well, I think it's easy if you know your clients. It's difficult if you use new clients constantly because then you don't know. Yeah.
But now, if you're building a business, you have to have some way of predicting or guesstimating what is likely to happen. So we also need to work out our numbers. The more data we have, the data rich we are, the more we know what we need to do in terms of activity levels. So this can be more predictable if you understand how you get clients in the first place. The more you know what activity to do to start making that happen. So if I invest £1,000 a month on Facebook, how many people respond to the advert or book on or whatever as a result? And then next month do the same thing. But life isn't linear always. It doesn't always work quite the same way. So Marks and Spencer's, for example, will have clotheslines, and then the following year they do it, and it doesn't quite work. The weather changes, fashion changes, things happen. You can't always predict it. Unfortunately, the buyers for Marks, their winter collection, they're probably ordering it now. By the time they actually make that order and it actually hits the shops in later this year, it might not be the right clothes. So you sort of have to predict a bit. So even though you're a successful company and you've been doing it for years, some things are just not. Human beings are very complicated, so it's not that predictable. But the more target market you are, the better. The more razor focused you are on the target market, the better, because you can predict your target market more. Part of the problem with people like Marks and Spencer's is, I would argue, Marks and Spencer's have lost focus on who their target market is. Because their target market is getting older and they're dying out. And the younger generation, they've lost a bit of focus. Who are they actually aiming at? Are they looking for young people, older people, middle-aged people, middle-class people? Are they looking for people who are fashion conscious, not so fashion conscious? Quality? They're a bit confused as to where they are, I think. And that's probably partly why it's all over the place. But if the closer you are to your target market, the clearer you are, the easier it is to focus on them, and then it's easier to know and predict who they are and what they do. Because you can watch them, you can find out what they do. Yeah? So if you want, people of a certain income bracket, if you go to a golf club or a certain area of London, you're more likely to find people of that certain income. What do parents, for example, I'm just giving an example, if you're targeting parents, what do parents of that income bracket, where do they hang out, what do they do, where would you find them? Because that's the clue to marketing to them, isn't it? And where are they interested in maybe having that conversation? Because even though you might find them in the right place, they might not be the right place to do the marketing though. Yeah, so you find them in the right place, but when you catch them in that place, so you might know the shop, Sainsbury's, they might go to that Marks and Spencer's right there. High income people are always in that Marks and Spencer's, but that's not the moment to be talking about concentration testing. When they're coming out Marks and Spencer's, they're not ready for that. It's the wrong place. So you might know where they are, but they're not ready for that conversation. Maybe a leaflet, maybe. So you got to also think about that as well. Yeah, where do you actually target them? Golf courses, I don't know, wherever. Yoga, similar thing, isn't it? Yoga. Where do you find somebody who could be interested in yoga? Yeah. So you can't find them at a yoga place because if they're at a yoga place, they're already doing it. So you've got to think, well, who's the sort of person that would thinking of doing yoga but is not yet doing yoga that might go into your website? Where would I find that type of person? Who typically are they? Is it people who are doing exercise at the moment? people who are not doing exercise, people who have could be referred from certain people. Where would you find that type of person? But the more you know who that is they most likely to be female or male? Are they more likely to be older or younger? And the clearer you are on it, the easier it is for you to focus on where would I find that type of person. So again, if you go on Facebook or you join a group, what group would you want to be on? Would you join a mum's group, for example? Yeah, would it be a mum's group in Loughton? Because a mum's group in Loughton has a lot of people who are in your demographic. Got a bit of time, got a bit of money, or maybe they don't have much time but they've got a bit of money. Young mothers, want to do a bit of yoga, can't go to the classes because they need childcare. They found your website and think, actually I could do this at home, I could do it with the baby, I could do it with the youngsters. Brilliant, I'll pay for the subscription, I'll get my yoga done. But the more you're clear about who that is, the easier. Otherwise, how do you market to the whole world something you want to do when you don't know who you're actually aiming at? So what is the advert saying? Do you ever see an advert where you think it's really rubbish? You ever see an advert and you think, it's a stupid advert? What crap advert that is? My sister would say, because my sister used to be an advertiser, said that advert's not aimed at you. If it's a good advert, that advert's not aimed at you, because I'm looking at it, that's crap that. But that's probably not a product, or you're not interested in that thing. If it was something you was really interested in, you still could say it's a rubbish advert, but I'm interested in the product. Could be. But generally, if you see an advert and you think, I can't see the point of that, it's probably not aimed at you. Or it's been badly targeted.
And again, it's about measuring who your ideal or typical client target audience is, because if you don't measure it, how would you know?
Yes, and be as specific as you can. Literally age, gender, ethnicity, income. The more detail you can have of it, the better. But one of the dangers though is that you know what you know, because what you don't know could be the problem. So do you think Mark Spencer know who their current customers are?
They probably have a good idea.
Probably have a good idea, right? And the Sparks card, Nectar card, these are critical for these companies. Because not only they know who you are, they know your buying habits. That's why they want people to have a card. The card is not about making you necessarily, although there is an element of loyalty making you buy more, the power of having a Nectar card is that Sainsbury's can find out what your buying habits are and predict more what you're going to buy, and also target you with products that you're likely to buy and give you offers and things that make you buy more and etc. Because you notice if your shopping is regularly a certain amount, the voucher is a little bit higher than the amount you normally averagely buy. So if your shopping comes to £60 on average, they'll give you a voucher for £70 if you buy £70 you get more points. And you go and buy £70 shopping for a couple of weeks, then they say if you spend £80 you get more points. So they're tracking you. They're tracking you to know that, so they know that they're offering. And if you notice that the ticket that comes out the machine is normally something you didn't buy. Often you forgot to buy it that week. So if you buy salmon every week, and then that week you didn't buy the salmon, the ticket that comes out for that thing is for money off the salmon for the following week, because they want you to keep on buying the products. So they think, and they're very clever, isn't it? But that's the level of data that they have that
and
we don't have.
And you use the coupons, and after the month after you don't get it. So I just don't go.
And if you ever shop at Sainsbury's without the Nectar card, nothing comes out of the machine. It just offers you a blanket thing, shop online or something. Because they don't have any data on you, because you paid cash or you paid without the card, they now don't know who you are, so they can't target you with any offer. They just give you a generic offer. So that's the power of the Nectar card. So the more customers you can get to have the card, the greater the data you have. This is why I encourage people to, as much as possible, to collect data on people. Because the more data you have on them, the better. And as I said, literally, because we're such a multicultural community, literally the ethnicity and so on. Sometimes ethnicity doesn't matter, sometimes gender doesn't matter. But it can be critical in a business if you get it wrong. Yeah? You think about Marks & Spencer's, on the fashion side, men, we tend not to buy clothes and shoes as often. So in terms of profitability, you might have good margins on some of our clothes, but the volume is not as high. So if you know that, you have to think about how you're going to build your business model. What do you want? So all these things are just factors. So can we talk about budgeting briefly? Budgeting is another thing that adds on to this, is mainly around looking at this, but it's more or less planning the year, thinking about the budget. So it's more or less just thinking about how much income you need to run your business. So again, if you do this exercise, it's easy to develop a budget from that. But some businesses need ongoing expenditure. Some businesses don't. So my business, for example, doesn't need much. There's not much cost I'm going to have throughout the year that I need to factor in terms of a budget. Say a budget for, like if I had 10 staff and they all had cars, you've got to factor in that cost of the cars, haven't you? You've got to factor in training for them. You've got to factor in days off. You've got to factor in lots of different things when you've got staff. So these are something you have to budget for. How are you budgeting for it? National insurance, you know, pension contributions. There's different things you've got to budget for, yeah? So that needs to go into the budget process. And again, you get caught out because there's no budget. Big businesses need to have a budget. And they need to predict what you're going to do and how much money have I got. So if I'm a manager responsible for something, what's my budget? So I'm doing marketing, have I got a budget for it? How much can I spend? Am I allowed to spend £1,000, £200, £100? Budgeting is not such a big issue. If you've got cash flow forecasting, it's not such a big deal. But if you start delegating money, it's really bad to delegate money without telling people what's the budget? How much can they spend, how much can they not spend? I've had companies that I've gone into that are a bigger company, say a company with over £1 million turnover, and I've gone through their budgets for them and just found some odd things and asked them questions about it. Why is your travel cost so high? So they have a number of lease cars, but their lease comes from all different people. They don't have one company, so they're not really locking down prices. They don't really have proper price banding. Mobile phone costs, why were their telephone costs so high? They had phones in drawers, people had left. See, when you have a bigger company, there's more opportunities for these problems to arise. So you have staff, you had 10 staff. 2 years ago you had 10 staff, now you've got 12, 13 staff. Some left, some came new. The mobile phones, when the contracts ended, did you get the mobile phones back from them? Did you have a system for it? Did you end the contract? So what do you find? You had phones in drawers that were being paid £50 a month that were just sitting there. Person left, nobody had done anything with it, and the bill's still ticking over. But because you've got a 1 million turnover business, a little 50 quid here and there is not necessarily being noticed by anybody until somebody says, why is our phone bill? I come along and say, why is your phone bill £500 a month? £500 a month looks high to me. Why is it £500 a month? You say, oh, because we've got mobile phones. Fine, okay. So how many mobile phones do you have? Well, we've got 3. £500. And then they check it and they see. Yeah, insurance, gone up every year. Business been going for 10 years. Haven't reviewed their insurance. It's just going up and up and up. Nobody's ever done another quote. So lots of these things, people love loyal customers because they just renew, isn't it? Your car insurance just renew every year. They just put it up every year. Everything you renew, they just put it up. And if we don't challenge it, we just keep paying more and more and more. After 10 years, you're paying a lot more than you were paying 10 years ago. If you don't review it, it's hitting you. All right? Hi, I'm Asari St Hill. Just want to introduce Growth Club. Basically, Growth Club is a 90-day planning day. We spend the whole day planning the next 90 days of your business. The idea is that when we start working with business owners, I like to make sure that you've got plans for the next 12 months. So we're very clear about where you're going. Over the next 12 months, over the next year, where do you want to go with your business? You know, what goals do you want to achieve? And normally there's some numbers in there somewhere, financials in there. What financial targets do you want to hit? What do you want to do to develop your business, whether it's your team or whatever? But what we find is a year is a long time. It's like most things. I want to run a marathon in a year's time. When do you start running? A few months before. So what we do is break it down into 4 quarterly time periods. So you then work on what's going on for the next 3 months. So it's a bit more manageable. Over a 13-week period, have some goals set. Where can I get to on my 12-month program in the next 13 weeks? So at the end of each quarter, normally the end of March, end of June, etc., I'll run a whole session for the whole day. One-to-one clients don't pay anything for it, but you can just pay for one-off sessions. And I encourage you to bring somebody with you, bring a colleague with you. They don't pay any extra. All the costs include lunch, all the refreshments, all the workshop materials, etc. It's very good and interactive. I encourage all my clients to come to it, regardless of what program they're on. I encourage everybody to come along to the planning day. It's a nice interactive day and you get plenty of time to draft your own plan. And the idea is that the first part of the day is review. We're reviewing where you were in the last 3 months or last year, how you got on, what are you doing. talk to you about some strategies that you might want to move your business forward with, have a guest speaker just before lunch, and then in the afternoon it's mainly over to you to start looking at developing your goals and writing down how you're going to actually implement them. So everybody leaves the room with a nice single sheet of paper with your 4 or 5 clear goals and what you're going to do to implement them over the next 13 weeks. That is the Growth Club Business Planning Day. It's a fantastic day. Hope to see you there soon. Make sure you book on, just leave your information and we'll get in contact with you. Make sure you get your place. Thank you very much. So, do it now. Call me on this number or email me on this address. All you have to do is just leave your details and I'll get back to you.
Believe I'm special. I will never give up on my dream.